Welcome to another episode of Candid Diplomacy, brought to you by JSI's own society, Diplomania, and the Center for Analytical Research and Engagement, where we host experts from IR, diplomacy, and politics to gain some very interesting insights. Today, I am honored to introduce you to our guest, Ambassador Riva Ganguly. Ambassador Riva Ganguly is a seasoned Indian diplomat with over 3 decades of experience. She retired as Secretary East in the Ministry of External Affairs. She was the Secretary in charge of ASEAN countries, Republic of Korea, Democratic Republic of Korea, Australia, Mongolia, Pacific Island countries, Latin America, and the Caribbean. She also handled SAARC, BIMSTEC, and IORA. She has been responsible for dealing with environmental negotiations in the United Nations, especially during India's presidency of the Conference of Parties. Our guest today has also served as High Commissioner to Bangladesh, Ambassador to Romania, Albania, Moldova, and Consul General in Shanghai and in New York City. She was the Director General of the Indian Council for Consular Relations and is currently a member of the Governing Council of Asian Confluence. Thank you for being here today, Ambassador. So let's just begin with the questions. In the last few years, India has gained importance in the geopolitical arena with regards to its involvement and perspective of the Indo-Pacific region. However, as of yet, we do not have a white paper to fall back on, despite aiming to be an aspiring voice in the region. How does this affect our strategy, and do you think India will be developing a strategy and a white paper soon?
Thank you for inviting me for this interview. It's such a pleasure to be in OP Jindal Global University. Typically in the Indian foreign policy system in our ministry, you will not find white papers on too many issues. I don't think, I haven't seen a white paper in several years. I don't know if we've ever had a white paper on anything. So generally speaking, if you as a student of IR or your fellow students, if you want to find out what the government policy is, the best source is speeches by our leaders, documents which are there in MEA websites. You will find a lot of documents. Also, something which perhaps it's a little difficult for students to read, but all these numerous statements which come out, joint declaration, joint statement, these are very useful, and when you compare one with the other, you will see between say something which was issued in 2019 to 2020, you will see the nuanced differences which emerge. So that is how you read it. And I just gave the lecture where I spoke about Prime Minister's speech, Shangri-La speech, which still stands as the most authoritative sort of statement on Indo-Pacific, and the follow-up where we developed the these 7 pillars of IPOI, which was again at an important, if I remember correctly, the East Asia Summit in Bangkok. So I don't think my list reading, from my reading, I don't think there's going to be any white paper on this issue. But that will not impact how we deal with the region or how we interact on Indo-Pacific issues.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. So moving on to the next question, nearly 2 decades later in 2014, we saw the Look East policy transform into the Act East policy, and this has reaped many benefits in terms of connectivity, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of bilateral relations. So what do you think will be the trajectory of this policy in the coming decades, and especially when we talk about Indo-ASEAN relations?
See, Indo-ASEAN relations have developed on a positive trajectory ever since India became dialogue partner, and we've completed more than 30 years of our relationship with ASEAN, and it's at 2 levels. Let's look at it at 2 levels, both at the level of bilateral relation with individual ASEAN countries and India's relation with ASEAN as a group. And in both cases, you only see a lot of development. economic relations, trade, investment, securing supply chains are some of the very important aspects of this relationship, and so is the other aspects, typical aspects of a relationship: defense, strategic issues, and connectivity, communication. These are all very important. As we discussed, people to people relations is very important, cultural links is very important, and we have seen that at the last India ASEAN summit, Prime Minister had spoken about 12 specific areas of cooperation and collaboration, which included the things like digital transformation, then research, capacity building and stuff like that. So this is a very important aspect. At the last summit, we also came up with two joint statements. One was on maritime cooperation, again a very, very important issue. We do share maritime space with ASEAN countries. So I think in future the relationship is only going to get stronger and will benefit both the ASEAN nations as well as India.
Yes, I think as an IR student, I also look forward to the developments taking place in Indo-ASEAN relations. Now, there has been great success in Indian foreign policy with regards to the global south, its neighborhood, East Asia, and it has faced a lot of setbacks in terms of border issues, maritime security, strained bilateral relations, or drug trafficking. So, how should India work towards these challenges, and how should it work towards strengthening its neighborhood first policy in this current political landscape?
India has had a neighborhood first policy for quite a few years now, and within this we see that we often talk about Bangladesh first, and because we share a very large land border and maritime border with them, and we on this there are certain very, very serious non-traditional security issues that this region faced. Now, let's go back to the time when, about 10-15 years back, we know that insurgency in the northeast was a big, big problem for India, and we know that insurgents were being given shelter in the territories of Bangladesh, to some extent Myanmar, and it was through diplomatic effort that this came to an end. When Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina came to power, one of the first things she did was to hand over some of these most wanted insurgents back to India, and that has created the confidence of within the two countries. It was a huge step in a bilateral relation, and so insurgency dealing with insurgency has been a very big factor. Similarly, there are mechanisms in place with our neighborhood, with all our neighboring countries, with the exception of our western neighbor, of course, on dealing with other non-traditional security issues that you mentioned, which is drug trafficking, then human trafficking, and I mentioned about terrorism, and I think there is cooperation across other fields also, like disaster management. Again, if you're that close neighbors, disaster will not choose the political border.
Definitely.
Disaster will, if there is a cyclone coming, it will hit both. So, on a gamut of issues, I think our neighborhood first policy has benefited both our neighbors and us. And here I think I should give the example of the vaccine diplomacy.
Yes.
I mean, we were the first to come forward and give vaccines to our neighbors, and that really helped during the COVID crisis, and I'm sure we will continue to do so in future also.
That was very insightful and informative. Thank you. So, moving on to our last question for this segment, I want to focus on multilateralism and your area of interest, climate change. So, India held the Voice of the Global South Summit last year alongside its G20 presidency. And I think that also has its roots in the Stockholm Conference of 1975, where the principles of common but differentiated responsibilities were set forth, and the divide between global North and global South was put forward, particularly and primarily by New Delhi. So, in short, I would basically like to ask, what do you think is required to make the global South self-sufficient in terms of energy poverty, accessibility, affordability, and energy transaction? And can we see India at the forefront of this as the voice of the global South?
See, India will remain at the forefront of global South on a large number of issues. In fact, I would say most of the issues that concern the global South, be it energy security, food security, any such issue. As far as climate change is concerned, there is a slight difference here, because you see, climate change is a global issue.
Yes.
It's a global problem, and we all know that the problem was not created by the global South. The problem was created elsewhere. The industrialized countries, with their rapid industrialization, created a lot of problems, and now the disproportionate burden is being put on the global South on dealing with this issue, which India has very clearly, it is clearly unfair. So, today the more relevant issue in the context of climate change would be climate justice.
Yes.
And I am sure India would for long time to come be in the forefront of that. Climate justice emphasizes importance of climate action for sustainable development, and so basically when you are dealing with a global issue, you need to find a global solution. And the global solution to climate issues, a lot of the issues are with the developed countries. The biggest sort of broad subject here would be technology. They have developed all the good technologies which can help global South to both mitigate and adapt to climate change. So, we need those technologies. So, it has to be a global effort in dealing with climate change, and there are a lot of things in which we have to collaborate, cooperate, and definitely India is a leader and will continue to be a leader in this.
Definitely. So, just to follow up to that question, Ambassador, with that sort of, where does the aspect of energy transition come into this play, where the global North has also accepted to provide funds for technology transfer to mitigate climate change? And does this also imply that the global North has sort of an authority or a right to impose restrictions on the global South?
Certainly they don't, and the energy transition is something in which China will also play a very important role, because they have a lot of technologies which are cheaper sometimes. So, that's an area where public, private have to work together, because we all know technologies are developed in a lot of technologies are developed in government labs.
Yes.
Government supports the development of a lot of technology, but a lot of niche technology also gets developed in the private sector. So, a lot of stakeholders actually have to come together, and of course, energy transition is one of the most important things in the climate agenda. But on the question of finance that you mentioned, for years and years the global North has been promising finances which have never really materialized.
Exactly.
So, there is skepticism on how much financing will actually come, because promises have been made and promises have not been fulfilled. So, these are global challenges which the global community has to deal with, and these are very serious challenges that one has to deal with.
Certainly, and I hope, as you mentioned, it is a global challenge, and I hope we deal with it globally and integrate it. There is a lot to explore here, but I think we should end. Thank you so much, Ambassador.
Thank you.
That was very insightful, and I'm sure all the students and everyone else watching us will gain a lot from this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.